Imagine being tied to a railway track as a heavily armored train weighing thousands of tons races straight toward you at maximum speed. Now multiply that terrifying sound by 1 million. That is not thunder. That is not an explosion. That is the roar of the atmosphere as it decides to tear everything apart on Earth's surface. Right now, the ground beneath your feet is not just shaking. It is screaming, ripping itself apart like a magnitude 7 earthquake. But the epicenter is not underground. The epicenter is hovering directly above you. Look up at the sky. Skyscrapers of steel and reinforced glass, proud symbols of human civilization, are being twisted like soaked towels. In a split second, air pressure drops violently, causing concrete structures to explode, firing billions of razor-sharp fragments outward, turning them into hypersonic bullets. On radar screens at the National Storm Prediction Center, meteorologists stand frozen in shock. The familiar Red Hook echo, signaling a tornado, has vanished, replaced by a dense, dark purple sphere, the signature of a debris ball. A massive sphere of destruction. It shows the storm is no longer pulling in air. It is swallowing an entire city. They stare at the measurements and realize a horrifying truth. The EF scale, the highest destruction scale in meteorological history, is no longer sufficient to measure this monster. The anemometer shatters the moment wind speeds hit 500 kilometers per hour. You think you are safe in a reinforced bunker, 3 meters underground? Dead wrong. A colossal vacuum force is peeling asphalt off highways, like peeling an orange, exposing bare clay beneath. Your steel shelter hatch, 10 centimeters thick, is shaking violently. Bolts begin popping loose one by one. Your ears scream in agony as pressure changes instantly. You cannot breathe. The air in your lungs is being ripped out. There is no escape. There is nowhere to run. The worst nightmare of scientists has stepped out of theoretical papers. It is here. It is an F6. An infinite wedge, born to erase the United States from the world map. And this is only the beginning. Welcome to the Great Plains of North America, a land known as Tornado Alley. The Tornado Corridor, where geography has set a perfect death trap, unmatched anywhere else on Earth. The time is 1 p.m. in suburban Norman, Oklahoma. It begins with temperature. Abnormal heat, sticky and suffocating, covering everything. The thermometer reads 38 degrees Celsius. Humidity reaches 98%, making it feel like boiling inside a pressure cooker of trapped air. You step outside, and the air feels like thick liquid, crushing your chest. Sweat pours out but cannot evaporate. This is not summer heat. This is fuel. Millions of tons of warm, moist air from the Gulf of Mexico are being pumped northward, relentlessly, colliding with cold, dry air plunging down from Canada, and a powerful jet stream sweeping east from the Rockies. These massive flows are crashing together right above peaceful wooden homes. Normally a stable, warm layer called the cap acts like a lid preventing eruption. But today, due to climate change, the energy below becomes overwhelming, and the lid is blown off. 2. Otus PM. Cumulonimbus clouds begin to rise. They do not drift lazily. They explode upward, at the speed of a missile. In less than 15 minutes, towering white columns punch through the troposphere, rising to 18 kilometers, touching the lower edge of the stratosphere on satellite imagery. It looks like a swelling wound, a malignant tumor spreading across the body of Earth. People on the ground begin to notice a strange change in the light. The sun is obscured, yet darkness does not fall immediately. Instead, the sky shifts into a shade that human survival instincts have always feared. A murky turquoise green. But why green? This is not a miracle. It is sunlight refracting through billions of massive hailstones suspended in the cloud layers. Just imagine how enormous the mass of water and ice must be to dye the entire sky that color. It is a warning sign that above you, a monster is gathering strength. Ice bullets the size of grapefruits, ready to rain down. 3:15 p.m. Silence blankets everything. This is the most terrifying moment. The wind suddenly stops. Trees stand frozen like lifeless statues. Not a single leaf rustles. Dogs across the area begin barking frantically into empty space, then tuck their tails and crawl under beds. Cattle on farms stop grazing at once. They cluster tightly together, eyes wide in panic, staring toward the southwest. Birds, the most sensitive weather forecasters of all, have vanished completely. Not a single wing dares rise into the sky now. You stand in your yard and suddenly feel your arm hair stand up. The hairs on your neck prickle. The air is being intensely ionized by friction from ice particles high above. The sharp metallic stench of ozone floods your nose. The smell of electrified train lines or an overheated photocopier. It is the smell of lightning being compressed. And then the only remaining sound erupts, shattering the silence. The civil defense warning siren, a long, mournful howl echoing through every street, slipping into every kitchen. But tragically, human reaction is a chilling indifference. Oklahomans have grown too used to this sound. They call it the soundtrack of spring. Probably just another hail warning. One man mutters, flipping steaks, in his backyard. Nearby, a group of teenagers hold up phones, laughing as they live stream, aiming their cameras at the dark cloud, slowly rotating in the distance. They do not know. This time the Doppler radar is not malfunctioning. Above them, the parent supercell has fully taken shape. It is no longer scattered clouds. It has merged into a colossal flying disk, 50 kilometers wide, blotting out all sunlight. Beneath the cloud base, a grotesque structure begins to descend. The wall cloud, black and rough like the surface of coal. And most importantly, it is rotating. This rotation is not slow. It spins violently at dizzying speed, creating a low-pressure core, sucking all surrounding air inward. Pressure drops so rapidly that sensitive people begin to feel pain in their ears. Nosebleeds appear in those with fragile blood vessels. 3:15 p.m. The first hailstones fall. Not rain, but dry, brutal thuds. Stones, the size of adult fists, slam into metal roofs, shattering car windows, sounding like gunfire. This is a warning volley. Nature is throwing stones to drive tiny creatures into shelter. But curiosity and complacency hold them too long. And from within the violently rotating wall cloud, a black finger begins probing toward the ground. It has not touched down yet, but dust below is already being pulled upward into small vortices. Debris and dry branches begin to dance. A mad choreography on the asphalt. The live streamers begin to sense something is wrong. That funnel. It is not slender like on television. It is swelling outward. It is not a tube, it is a wall. It is devouring light. Laughter dies, regret creeps in. But time has run out. The F6 monster has completed its gestation. It is ready to plant its colossal foot onto the ground and grind human civilization into ashes. The clock strikes 4 p.m. The moment of destruction begins. The probing finger from before is gone. Instead, the entire wall cloud collapses to the ground. Forget the image of slender funnels, twisting like dancers you see in movies. What now appears before the people of Oklahoma is a pitch-black wall, nearly 2 miles wide. In storm chaser terminology, this is called the wedge. But at this monstrous scale, it becomes the infinite wedge. When it touches down, the ground does not shake. Instead, a deafening explosion erupts. Not from a bomb, but from an extreme pressure differential that rips the air apart at the point of contact. The F6 tornado officially opens fire. with a forward speed reaching 100 kilometers per hour. The monster charges toward the city center, like a beast, starving, yet it is the rotational wind speed inside that spreads true terror. 612 kilometers per hour. Can you comprehend that number? That is the cruising speed of a commercial jet in flight. At this threshold, air is no longer a gas. It becomes a liquid, a dense, material flood, like concrete smashing into everything, with the kinetic energy of a freight train. The laws of structural engineering become meaningless. Look at the City General Hospital. A 10-story reinforced concrete structure. As the outer edge of the vortex passes, the building does not collapse normally. It disintegrates as F6 pressure, tons per square meter, peels concrete walls apart like onion skins. Load-bearing steel frames twist into corkscrews, then snap like strands of noodles. In 15 seconds, a massive building vanishes, leaving only bare foundations. Not a single brick intact. Everything ground into fine dust. This is the meat grinder effect. The blender effect. Inside the core, millions of tons of debris spin at supersonic speed. 18-wheel trucks, traffic signs, and fragments of homes become gigantic bullets. They collide, shattering into a rotating wall of debris. Anything drawn inside is abraded until unrecognizable. On Interstate 35, chaos reaches its peak. Thousands of vehicles are jammed. In desperate evacuation attempts, car horns scream amid panicked cries. People abandon vehicles, running on foot over medians, trampling one another to find shelter. But where do you hide on a flat plain? A truck driver glances in his rearview mirror and sees death approaching. He sees cars behind him, not blown sideways, but lifted straight upward. The vacuum at the core is strong enough to defeat gravity. 2-ton SUVs hang in midair, like plastic toys, slowly spinning, before being sucked into the dense darkness above. Then it is his turn. The 18-wheeler shudders violently. The windshield explodes inward. The seatbelt crushes his chest. And the world flips. The truck is lifted 300 meters high, then hurled like a pebble, flying 2 kilometers before smashing apart into a plowed cornfield. But the most terrifying part is not above ground. It is in places humans believe are safest. A reinforced shelter in an upscale neighborhood. Hundreds of people huddle inside underground concrete bunkers rated for Category 5 storms. They cling to each other, covering children's ears, praying in the darkness. But physics is a different definition. When the core passes directly overhead, the outside atmospheric pressure drops to record lows in Earth's history. The pressure difference between the shelter interior and the outside creates a massive outward blast force. Thick steel bunker doors, reinforced with steel locking bars. 20-millimeter bolts begin to warp. Metal screams as it grinds and twists, piercing the ears. Bang! The steel door is ripped from its hinges, launched skyward like a dry leaf. Instantly, the void rushes in. Not wind blowing, but suction. People nearest the entrance scream, as invisible hands seize them, dragging them out, hurling them into the raging vortex above. Instantly, those remaining cling desperately to water pipes, to table legs, fingernails digging into concrete until they bleed. The air inside the shelter is stripped away in 2 seconds. Lungs swell painfully, on the verge of rupture. Eardrums tear, blood pouring from ears. They gasp for breath, but there is no oxygen, only dust and the metallic stench of mud flooding their throats. In that desperate darkness, the roar of the storm drowns all screams. They realize a brutal truth. Before absolute natural power, reinforced concrete is nothing but fragile paper. The storm continues onward. leaving behind a 4-mile-wide trail of destruction. The ground is shaved bare, vegetation ripped out by the roots. Fertile topsoil is stripped away, leaving raw red clay exposed. Asphalt roads vanish, replaced by jagged earth. The storm's color now changes. From pitch black to dark red and ash gray, the colors of soil, bricks, and blood. It has fed well, but it does not stop. Ahead lies the oil refinery complex and the city's high-voltage substation. A double catastrophe is about to unfold, turning the tornado into a fire monster. If you think 600 km/h winds are the limit of suffering, you are mistaken. Nature always finds new ways to create destruction, more inventive and more brutal. Just after 4:15 p.m., the F-size tornado moves into the eastern industrial zone, home to massive fuel storage tanks, dense networks of gas pipelines buried beneath the ground, and a 500 kilovolt power substation supplying electricity to 3 states. A gigantic powder keg awaiting ignition, and ignition arrives as the tornado strikes the substation. 50-meter steel towers fold like straw. Tens of thousands of volts arc violently. Blue electric arcs dance madly in the air. At the same time, the vacuum force rips fuel tanks apart. Millions of liters of fuel erupt into the air, mixing with gas leaking from ruptured pipelines. A spark meets the gas cloud boom. A localized thermobaric explosion shakes the ground. But instead of spreading outward, the flames are instantly seized by the vortex, dragged straight into the storm's core. Death changes color. From a mud-black column, the tornado transforms into a pillar of fire, spinning upward into the clouds. It is no longer a tornado. It becomes a fire-nado, a roaring fire dragon 10 kilometers tall. Temperatures inside the core surge past 1,000 degrees Celsius. Oxygen is completely consumed. The storm no longer merely shreds objects. It incinerates everything to ash before it even hits the ground. Metal debris suspended in the air glows white-hot, turning into blazing meteors, raining down on nearby neighborhoods, not yet destroyed by wind. The scene resembles Dante's Inferno, reborn on Earth. Homes ignite without wind touching them. Asphalt melts and boils beneath feet. Survivors who escaped the initial winds now face death by suffocation and thermal burns. Dirt, 45 p.m. The storm passes, but cascading consequences begin. The infrastructure of an entire region collapses. Completely, domino style. When the main transformer detonates, the national power grid suffers catastrophic load imbalance. Automatic protection systems activate, cutting power across Oklahoma and cascading into Texas. 15 million people in Texas plunge into total darkness. No electricity, no internet, no mobile signal. Communication towers have been flattened. Inside the rubble, thousands are trapped, pinned beneath tons of concrete, injured, bleeding and panicked. They try to call 911, but their phone screens show only a hopeless message. No service. Their cries for help vanish into the void. The National Guard is mobilized under emergency orders. Armored vehicles and military trucks thunder toward the disaster zone, but they are forced to halt 20 kilometers from ground zero because the roads no longer exist. Interstate 35, the main transportation artery, has been erased, replaced by a massive debris field 10 meters high, stretching to the horizon. The remains of thousands of homes, tens of thousands of cars and trees, twisted power poles fused into an impenetrable wall. Nothing on wheels can pass. From the air, Black Hawk rescue helicopters attempt to reach the area, but they too are powerless. Aftershocks of the storm still generate violent, unpredictable wind currents, capable of downing any aircraft. Hail continues to fall like shrapnel. Pilots can only circle the disaster's perimeter, looking down at the sea of fire and rubble below, with eyes full of despair. Command, this is Rescue Team Alpha 1. We are unable to land. Repeat, unable to land. There are no landing zones left. Everything is gone. Everything has been leveled. Preliminary damage assessments begin to emerge. The numbers chill the world to the bone. In less than 60 minutes of rampage, the F6 monster carved a destruction corridor 120 kilometers long, 4 kilometers wide. An area equivalent to erasing Paris, or Manhattan entirely. An estimated 50,000 homes are completely destroyed. The region's largest hospitals are offline or collapsed. Economic losses are estimated at $500 billion, far surpassing Hurricane Katrina or the Japanese tsunami. The world's largest insurance companies declare bankruptcy overnight. Wall Street plunges into freefall as investors realize how fragile the world's largest economy truly is. Before the wrath of Mother Nature. But the most painful number is not money. It is the silence. Silence blankets the piles of rubble. No car horns, no machinery. Only the crackle of smoldering fires and the moan of wind. Through skeletal steel frames, night falls. A night of absolute darkness. No streetlights. No moonlight, as dust clouds still shroud the sky. Survivors lie alone in the darkness, beside the bodies of loved ones, waiting for rescue that may never arrive in time. The system has collapsed. Humanity, with all its technology and arrogance, has been utterly defeated in less than 1 hour. 6 a.m., the sun rises. Normally, dawn symbolizes hope, a new beginning. But today in Oklahoma, sunlight has only one cruel purpose: to expose the naked truth hidden by the night. As the first rays pierce the lingering dust, still suspended in the air, the scene before the survivors is no longer Earth. It resembles the surface of Mars, or an abandoned nuclear test site. Look at what was yesterday, a thriving neighborhood, with ancient oak-lined streets, red-tiled rooftops, schools filled with children's laughter, now flattened into a terrifyingly smooth plain. No wall stands taller than half a meter. Trees are not broken. They are uprooted and erased without a trace, leaving only gaping pits, like open, bleeding wounds. The only thing left intact, cruelly ironic, is a pink baby-feeding chair, lying exposed atop a twisted water tower, 5 kilometers away. It rests there silently, overlooking the devastation below, like a mute witness to the apocalypse. From underground, shelter doors burst open. Survivors emerge. They stagger forward like ghosts, clothes torn to shreds, their bodies coated in a white layer of gypsum dust. They do not cry. Their tears are gone, or the pain is so vast their minds have gone numb. They look at one another, but no one speaks. Language is powerless before such a sight. In the distance, ambulance sirens faintly echo, but they sound distant and fragile. The sound of aircraft, helicopters circling overhead, shatters the silence. Yet no one looks up. They are searching for traces of their homes. Amid an endless sea of rubble, this F6 catastrophe is not a random act of divine punishment. Look straight at the truth. This is a monster we have nurtured ourselves. Over the past century, humanity has pumped billions of tons of emissions into the atmosphere, turning the oceans into a gigantic boiling pot. We have fueled the storms, fed the demons. And today, nature is simply returning that energy in the most brutal way possible. The Earth does not need us to survive. but we need the Earth. When we break the fragile balance of the climate, we are signing our own death sentence. Today's F6 megatornado is in America, but tomorrow it could appear anywhere in Europe, Asia, or right above your own home. Scientists have warned us. Computer models have predicted it, but we chose to ignore them. This video is a hypothetical scenario, but it is built upon real data, unfolding every single day. The line between fiction and reality is thinning. With every degree Celsius, the planet warms. Next time, when you see the sky turn an eerie emerald green, when you hear a roar, like a train charging from the horizon, do not pull out your phone to film. Do not try to become a hero on social media. Run as if it were the final moment of your life. Because nature does not forgive.